Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines. Russian strikes kill 9 in Ukraine overnight as Kiev and Moscow trade drone fire. 12 UAVs are downed near Moscow as well. Explosions rock the Ukrainian capital. An Israeli airstrike on Khan Yunis kills 9 of a doctor's 10 children just minutes after she left for work. Israel says it targeted militants, but the high civilian toll is now under review. An all-party Indian delegation led by Congress MP Shashi Tharoor pays tribute at the 9/11 Memorial in New York as part of a global anti-terror outreach. The visit underscores India's call for united action against cross-border terrorism on the world stage. A university field trip ended in tragedy as a bus carrying students and professors crashed in Western Colombia, killing at least 10 people. Authorities are investigating the cause as survivors recall a sudden loss of control before the deadly impact. On day 2 of their biggest prisoner of war swap, Russia and Ukraine exchanged 307 soldiers each, marking a major moment in the 3-year conflict. North Korea has arrested shipyard officials after a failed warship launch damaged a 5,000-ton vessel in front of Kim Jong-un. State media says the incident hurt national dignity, prompting harsh rebuke and promises of punishment from the leader. A US drone strike in southern Yemen has killed 9 suspected al-Qaeda members, including a local leader, according to Yemeni security sources. The strike targeted a mountainous area in Arbian province, known for militant activity. In the United Kingdom, Southwestern Railways return to public hands, marking Labour's first step in renationalising Britain's rail network. Transport Secretary calls it a watershed moment in putting passengers ahead of private profit. Our top story today, Russian strikes have killed at least 9 people in Ukraine, according to officials, as Kiev and Moscow traded fire amid an ongoing major prisoner swap. 4 people were reported dead and 5 wounded in the western Kalmiensky region, while Kiev came under attack for the second night in a row. 4 people were killed and 16 were injured in the Kiev region, including 3 children in a massive night attack. A man was also killed when a residential building was hit by a drone in Mykolaiv in southern Ukraine, according to the emergency services. This comes as Kiev and Moscow carry out the biggest prisoner swap since the start of Moscow's invasion. Meanwhile, in Moscow, restrictions were imposed on at least 4 airports, according to the main hub, as per the Russian Civilian Aviation Authority. Mayor Sergei Sobyanin also said that 12 drones flying towards the Russian capital had been intercepted as well. Furthermore, and after an overnight drone and missile strikes on Kiev, overnight killed at least 15 people. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has once again raised calls for sanctions on Russia. Here's what he said.
Масштабний та російський удар, балістика. Частину ракет вдалося збити, було також 250 дронів, більшість шахедів. Щоночі наші сили працюють для захисту життів. На все це потрібна реакція, жорстка реакція Сполучених Штатів Америки, реакція Європи, реакція всіх світів, хто хоче завершення війни. Путін відмовився від припинення вогню вже неодноразово. Це нічого йому не дає, крім того, що кожного дня він забирає життя. Кожен день дає приводи для нових санкцій проти Росії. Кожен день доводить, що без тиску на Росію війна триватиме.
We now move over to the Middle East. Rescuers in Gaza say an Israeli airstrike has killed 9 children belonging to a married pair of doctors in the southern city of Khan Yunis. Gaza's Civil Defense Agency reported that the children of Dr. Hamdi al-Najjar and Dr. Ala al-Najjar died in the strike, with the parents and another son seriously wounded. Let's listen in to what the niece of the Mahmoud al-Najjar had to say.
Uncle's wife, Dr. Ala Amin al-Najjar, she's a doctor for the children. She treats children, and in a moment, her daughters and her sons, with her hand died. Yahya, Sidra, Luqman, Sadin, Rival, Jubran, all of them died between his hand. She left the hospital, walking on her leg, reaching to Khizan al-Najjar.
Footage from the aftermath showed rescuers recovering charred bodies from the family home. The Israeli military stated that the strike was under review following reports of the civilian casualties. In Tel Aviv, Israeli protesters rallied once again, calling on the government to secure a hostage deal and an end to the war in Gaza. Demonstrators held signs and chanted slogans demanding the release of captives still held by Hamas since the October the 7th attack in 2023. Let's listen in to what some of the protesters had to say.
This government must go away. I think everything else will be better than this government who does such a damage for all of us, Israelis, Palestinians, all the area. It's just...
We want the war to end now because we see no future to this process. We see that the war will not lead to the release of the hostages, and that it will bring more death, more misery on both sides, more soldiers to be killed.
In a related development, Israel is investigating multiple cases involving its own soldiers, allegedly forcing Palestinians to act as human shields in Gaza, a practice the Israeli military says is strictly prohibited under its orders. In a statement, the Israel Defense Forces confirmed that several investigations have been launched by its military police criminal division following reports that Palestinians were coerced into participating in military operations, including being sent into buildings and tunnels to check for explosives or armed fighters. The announcement follows a report which cited testimonies from both Palestinian civilians and Israeli soldiers. According to the report, the use of Palestinians as human shields has become widespread during the ongoing conflict. Meanwhile, Malaysia's foreign minister has condemned what he called atrocities in Gaza, accusing the international community of double standards and indifference to the suffering of Palestinians. Speaking at a regional ASEAN meeting, Minister Muhammad Hassan said the violence reflects a breakdown in respect for international law. We're now joined by Professor Rohan Gunaratne, who is an international security expert located in Singapore, to discuss this further. Rohan, thank you very much for joining us on the programme. I want to start with the biggest news, obviously, this case of this female doctor that left for work, and then her 9 of her 10 children were killed in an Israeli strike. Now, the IDF say they have launched an investigation into this. How likely is it we see any repercussions, how reliable will the IDF investigation be on this matter? We've seen internal investigations before, one including those 15 medical staff that were killed in Israel. You can liken it to a case study like that. Do you think we're going to see any results? Anyone take accountability for this?
IDF will certainly investigate this matter, but what is important for all of us to understand is 2 things. One is huge, tragic loss of civilians. Second is that Hamas is continuing to use hospitals and the immediate neighborhood of hospitals as a human shield to protect and fight IDF. And third is the grave importance of every Arab and Muslim country, the leaders asking Hamas to release the Israeli hostages and to disarm and surrender. So unless and until there is a strategic solution, meaning those hostages are released, IDF will not stop operations. Certainly we can look at this particular incident where an entire family was nearly wiped out. But the real end to this suffering will come only when the hostages are released and Hamas disarms and surrender. So the responsibility is not only of Israel.
Professor, these two doctors and obviously the children as well, Hamdi al-Najjar and Ala al-Najjar, they have been revealed to have no association with Hamas. They've been studied. Their colleagues have been questioned. Their social medias have been scanned, and there's no visible link to Hamas as far as we know. And if that is the case, surely this kind of breaks some sort of international law.
Yes, certainly. Every civilian death should be investigated because according to international law, civilians should not be targeted. Even if there is collateral damage, that should be investigated because especially the loss of so many children in one family demonstrates the devastation of war. But what is crucial is not only to address this one particular incident, which tells us a lot, but also address the most strategic solution of ending the war. And that is if the Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad and the other militant group release the hostages. Because until the hostages are not released, IDF will continue to operate. IDF has all the right to protect civilians, but also release their hostages. So we must look at both the problem and also the solution.
If you look at the statistics since Israel has restarted hostilities last month, they have released one hostage, and that was an American hostage, which was released during Donald Trump's visit to the region. Saying, why would Hamas release these hostages if they're the only bargaining chips they really have left?
You are absolutely correct. Hamas is holding the hostages for its own protection, and that is their greatest bargaining chip. And that is the very reason there must be a solution beyond Hamas. As long as Hamas stays in Gaza, Palestinian civilians will die because IDF will mount operation after operation. Even in Israel, there's a huge call upon Netanyahu not to pursue war as option because the Israelis themselves want their nationals who are being held by Hamas. But Netanyahu is determined to conduct these operations. And these operations have not really helped to release any of the hostages because Hamas has developed the competency to hide these hostages. So we have to look at a diplomatic solution, but a solution that will end the war, not protract the war.
Yes, and Rohan, we are seeing now some substantial opposition to Israel's actions in their war now. Obviously, from allies, we've had a statement from the Foreign Minister of Malaysia today. We've obviously previously had comments, a joint statement from Mark Carney, Keir Starmer, and Emmanuel Macron, both condemning Israel's ongoing offensive. And now today we have this report that Israel is using Palestinians as human shields. Now the IDF is looking into this. How do you think that the way the IDF has conducted itself during this conflict is going to fee with time?
The British, Canadian, and the French statements and other statements are important to send a message to Israel. But at the same time, the Arab governments, the Muslim governments should Hamas, including those governments that have hitherto funded and supported Hamas and PIJ, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, to release the hostages. We need both these parties to act to end the killing, the suffering of the civilians.
Professor Rohan Gunaratne, thank you very much for your insight on the programme. We now move on. As part of India's global outreach on Operation Sindoor, multiple all-party delegations continue their diplomatic efforts abroad. Congress MP Shashi Tharoor and members of an all-party parliamentary delegation arrived in the United States as part of India's global outreach on Operation Sindoor and its fight against terrorism. During an interaction at the Indian consulate in New York, Tharoor briefed the audience on the recent Pahalgam terror attack, which claimed the lives of 26 innocent civilians. He detailed India's subsequent counter-operation, Operation Sindoor, and strongly underlined Pakistan's role in orchestrating the deadly attack. Take a listen.
As I say, only to send a message about terror. We are not interested, and we still remain absolutely clear that we are not interested in warfare with Pakistan. We would much rather be left alone to grow our economy and pull our people into the world that they're getting ready for in the 21st century. That the Pakistanis have. Sadly, we may be a status quo power, they are not. They are a revisionist power, they covet territory that India controls, and they want to have it at any price. And if they can't get it through conventional means, they're willing to get it through terrorism. That is not acceptable to us, and that's really the message that we are here to give all of us, all of you in this country and elsewhere.
Earlier, Tharoor and the delegation paid tribute to the 9/11 Memorial and Museum in New York, describing it as a deeply moving moment. Tharoor emphasized the need for a united global stand against terrorism. Accompanying Tharoor were other members of the multi-party delegation who joined in paying respects to the victims of the 9/11 terror attacks. Meanwhile, MP Supriya Sule is leading another multi-party group in Qatar. Her delegation will also visit South Africa, Ethiopia and Egypt. In parallel, a delegation led by MP Sanjay Jha has just reached South Korea after concluding a visit to Japan. And in the Gulf, another multi-party delegation arrived in Bahrain's Manama, reinforcing India's coordinated international campaign to expose Pakistan's terror links and underscore the objectives of Operation Sindoor. These delegations are part of India's outreach across 33 global capitals. We move on once again. ASEAN foreign ministers have renewed their call for regional unity, pledging continued support to Myanmar amid ongoing political and humanitarian challenges. Meeting in Kuala Lumpur on Sunday, Malaysian Foreign Minister Mohammed Hassan highlighted the bloc's quick response to Myanmar's recent earthquake, calling it a true reflection of ASEAN's core values: compassion, solidarity and humanity. Hassan urged Myanmar's stakeholders to strengthen the current ceasefire and work towards long-term peace. He said ASEAN must use its voice on the global stage, not just speak up for the oppressed, but to push for solutions based on principles and international law. Malaysia currently holds ASEAN's rotating chair and says the bloc must not remain silent in the face of crisis. Let's take a listen in to what the Malaysian Foreign Minister had to say.
Swift and immediate action following the tragic earthquake that struck parts of Myanmar and Thailand. Our quick response is a reflection of a spirit of compassion, solidarity and humanity that inspired the founding of ASEAN. It is also a testament to the unwavering commitment of us as Assembly to support Myanmar in this time of call on the stakeholders in Myanmar to cease hostilities and to extend and expand the ceasefire to facilitate the long and difficult path towards recovery and ease the suffering of the people. ASEAN cannot remain silent. We have a voice in world affairs, and we must use our voice to speak up for the oppressed and offer solutions grounded in principles and international law.
We now move over to South America for our next story, where a university field trip in Colombia turned deadly on Saturday. At least 10 people were killed and 11 others were injured after a bus carrying students and staff crashed in the western region of Quindío. Authorities say the driver lost control while crossing the Helicoil bridge. Several passengers were thrown from the vehicle into a ravine. The bus was carrying 26 people from Tolima to Quindío, including 22 students, 2 teachers and a communications officer from Humboldt University. The university has declared 2 days of mourning to honour the victims, including students, faculty and administrators. Road accidents remain a major threat in Colombia, which reported an average of 22 traffic deaths per day in 2024. Now we move over to North America, where social media platform X was hit by a 2-hour outage on May the 24th, prompting owner Elon Musk to say he needs to spend more time focusing on his companies. His statement echoed comments earlier this month suggesting he would reduce his role in US President Donald Trump's administration. Elon Musk is the owner and CEO of X, XAI, electric car maker Tesla and rocket builder SpaceX, not to mention his recent polarizing efforts to help Trump slash the size of the federal government. This comes after Musk faced backlash against his efforts to help Trump slash the size of the US federal government. Reportedly, as the backlash to those cuts grew and Tesla share prices slipped, Musk began drawing away from the government role, confirming last week that he was down to 1 or 2 days a week at the Department of Government Efficiency. Meanwhile, the site intelligence group has reported that hacker activist group Dignet has claimed responsibility for the outage. Reportedly, Dignet had called the attack a test of its so-called distributed denial of service capabilities and flooded the system with online traffic to make it inaccessible to legitimate users. We now move to South Asia, where Bangladesh's caretaker government on Saturday warned that national unity is crucial to prevent the return of authoritarianism and ensure democratic reform. The statement followed a tense week of rival street protests in Dhaka. The interim administration took over months after mass student-led protests in August 2024 ousted Sheikh Hasina, ending her 15-year rule. Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus, 84, now leads the caretaker government. He returned from exile last year and has pledged to implement reforms before elections due by June 2026. The government said unreasonable demands and provocative statements have obstructed its work. It warned that if its ability to function is undermined, it will take necessary steps with the people without giving further detail. Yunus is expected to meet leaders from the Bangladesh Nationalist Party and the Jamaat-e-Islami, both of whom have staged protests. The BNP, widely seen as election frontrunners, is demanding polls by December 2025. Bangladesh's Army Chief General Walker-uz-Zaman reportedly echoed that demand is this week, adding pressure from the interim administration. Hasina remains in self-imposed exile in India, defying an arrest warrant for allegedly crimes against humanity during last year's deadly crackdown, which left at least 1,400 people dead. We return to South America. Ecuador's President Daniel Noboa has officially been sworn in following his re-election for another 4-year term this year. Noboa was sworn in alongside his Vice President, Maria Jose Pinto, and their terms will run until the May of 2029. In a ceremony at the National Assembly on Saturday, he was sworn in by the body's president, Niels Olsen Piet. Olsen placed a presidential sash over Noboa's shoulders as they raised their joint hands in the middle of the celebrations. Noboa pledged in his inauguration speech to continue to tackle corruption, drug trafficking and violent crime. He also swore to implement reforms and said he would lay a solid foundation for job creation and investment by working with Ecuador's private sector. The ceremony in the capital, Quito, was attended by U.S. Health Secretary Robert Kennedy, Colombia's President Gustavo Petro, Peruvian President Dina Boluarte, and many other international guests and delegates. We stay in the region. Colombia's Navy has made one of its biggest drug busts this year. Over 6 metric tons of cocaine chloral hydrate have been seized in a major operation on the country's western coast. The 2-day mission took place in Tumaco, near the border with Ecuador. Rear Admiral Camilo Mauricio Gutierrez says the drugs are worth over $300 million on the international market. Half of the haul came from a semi-submersible vessel intercepted offshore. 3 Ecuadorian nationals were on board. All of them have been detained. The rest of the cocaine was found hidden underground, buried to avoid detection. The Colombian Navy says this operation strikes a major blow to the transnational drug trafficking networks in the region. Let's listen in to what the commander of Pacific Naval Force had to say on the issue.
Con estas dos operaciones, la Armada Nacional logró evitar que ingresaran a las arcas de los grupos armados organizados más de 300 millones de dólares. Y evitamos también que circularan en las diferentes calles del mundo más de 15 millones. En la primera operación se realizó en tierra en zona rural de Tumaco, donde se incautaron 3.260 kilogramos de clorhidrato de cocaína. Y la segunda operación se realizó en el mar a 80 millas náuticas del litoral de Tumaco, donde incautamos 3.000 kilogramos de clorhidrato de cocaína.
We now move over to the United States, where Americans on Sunday will mark 5 years since George Floyd was killed by a US police officer. Floyd's death on March the 25th, 2020, launched the Black Lives Matter movement into a global force against police violence and systemic inequality. At George Floyd Square in Minneapolis, the intersection where the 46-year-old died, a memorial event took place, featuring protest art, music, and moments of silence. Floyd's aunt, Angela Harrison, urged people to keep pushing for reform despite a growing backlash. Around 50 people gathered at the memorial to lay yellow roses and reflect. Let's now turn to Europe, where French Prime Minister Francois Bayrou has said that he would re-examine a planned reform after taxi drivers threatened to intensify protests. Cabbies warned of blocking Paris airports and rolling garrots on Sunday in response to new rules on patient transport fees. For many French taxi drivers, transporting patients is a key income source. They say the new nationwide pricing rules set to start in October would slash their earnings. Bayrou met with taxi federations on Saturday and said talks would continue to examine in the coming weeks. They have ideas for making savings, he added earlier in the day. The National Taxi Federation demanded that the government immediately withdraw the reform and return to the negotiating table. By Saturday afternoon, around 1,200 taxis were parked near the Transport Ministry in Paris to demonstrate. Drivers were also repeated long-standing concerns about ride-hailing apps like Uber and Bolt, calling them unfair competition. The protests mark a rising standoff between the government and drivers over reforms seen as threatening the taxi industry. We stay in Europe. Britain's Southwestern Railways returns to public ownership on Sunday, marking the Labour government's first step in renationalising the country's rail operators. The move fulfills a core promise by Prime Minister Keir Starmer, whose party returned to power last July after 14 years of opposition. Today is a watershed moment, said Transport Secretary Heidi Alexander, calling it the start of railways serving passengers and not profits. The South Western Railway is the first private operator to be brought under public control, though 4 others were previously taken over due to poor performance. The government passed a law in November allowing operators to be taken over when the contracts expire, or earlier if mismanaged, to be run by Great British Railways. Alexander warned change would take time. Public ownership isn't a silver bullet, she said, but it ends 30 years of fragmentation. Critics say British railway passengers face high prices, delays and service confusion. Nearly 4% of services were cancelled in the past year. Rail unions welcome the move, saying privatisation didn't and doesn't work, said union leader Mick Whelan. 2 more operators will be renationalised by late 2025, with all private contracts ending by 2027. The government expects to save £150 million a year. In Scotland and Wales, rail operators are already state-owned under devolved transport policy. We now jump across the pond where dissident Iranian director Jafar Pahani urged Iranians to put their differences aside and work for freedom as he accepted an award for Best Film in Cannes on Saturday. His film, It Was Just an Accident, tells the tale of 5 ordinary Iranians confronted with a man they believed tortured them in jail. Pahani, who was banned from making films in 2010, has been imprisoned twice and argued that cinema must be a space for free expression. He was in Cannes for the first time in 15 years, having seen a travel ban lifted on him in 2023. Here's what he said about Iranian cinema.
Le cinéma iranien a vécu beaucoup de choses pour arriver là.
اون کسانی که در شرایط سخت‌تر از من کار کردند
Tous mes collègues qui ont travaillé dans les situations même plus difficiles que moi.
هنوز سینما ایران رو تو جهان کسی نمیشناخت.
À l'époque, on ne connaissait pas le cinéma iranien dans le monde.
ولی در واقع پایه‌های اصلی این سینما رو ریختن.
Mais ils ont mis la fondation du cinéma iranien.
تا اینکه به این نقطه رسیده.
Pour qu'on arrive là aujourd'hui.
حالا دوستان جوان، دوستانی که دارن راه اونها رو پیش گرفتن.
Et maintenant, les amis plus jeunes, les amis qui ont continué leur chemin.
بدونن که هیچ قدرتی نمیتونه جلوشون رو بگیره.
Il faut qu'ils sachent qu'aucun pouvoir peut leur arrêter ce chemin.
چون شما توان دارید در هر شرایط سخت راه حل پیدا کنید و کار خودتون رو بکنید.
Parce que vous avez ce pouvoir de trouver une solution dans toutes les conditions compliquées et difficiles.
This comes as a power substation and an electricity pylon were vandalised overnight in the region around France's Cannes, which has been hit by a major blackout on the final day of its film festival. The substation was targeted by a suspected arson attack, while the legs of a pylon carrying a high voltage line were cut in the Vellouvenier-Loubet, according to prosecutors and local officials. So the electricity was being restored gradually to the region, and some reports shared that traffic lights were working again near the Cannes Film Festival headquarters. To the world of sport now, where Novak Djokovic has done it again, claiming his 100th tour level title after a thrilling final at the Geneva Open. The world number 6 fought back from a set down to beat Poland's Herbert Hurkacz in a 3-set battle. The win makes Djokovic just the 3rd man in the Open era to hit the 100 title milestone, joining Jimmy Connors and Roger Federer. The 38-year-old Serbian is now the oldest champion in the Geneva Open's history. This is his first trophy since his gold medal win in Paris last year.
Incredible match, 7-6 in the third with obviously full stadium, beautiful atmosphere, so I'm just grateful to clinch the 100 here.
Well, that's all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world.